It's been 20 years since Samurai Champloo sliced its way onto our screens, but in a world overflowing with anime, the question isn't is it still good, it's why does it still hit so hard in 2025? Now everyone loves to bring up the sibling rivalry, Cowboy Bebop versus Samurai Champloo, but this isn't about tearing Bebop down. Bebop was smooth jazz and cigarettes, polished, cool, and a love letter to the past. Champloo was freestyle rap and spilled sake, raw, messy, funny, and alive. At its core, it's the clash of two worlds that should never fit together, Edo period Japan and hip-hop culture, and yet somehow Watanabe makes them rhyme. And beneath all that style, it's just three misfits wandering Japan. Mugen, a criminal who fights like he's breakdancing, Jin, a ronin bound by honor, and Fu, a girl chasing a sunflower-scented memory. 20 years later, it still feels less like an anime and more like a freestyle that never stopped echoing. Samurai Champloo isn't just an anime with a hip-hop soundtrack slapped on top. It is hip-hop. Every frame, every fight, every cut is infused with the culture. And you can see it clearest if you break it down into the four pillars of hip-hop. First, breakdancing. Mugen's fighting style isn't refined swordsmanship. It's wild, erratic, and improvised. His movements flip, spin, and crash like a breakdancer battling on the floor. And standing across from him, Jin is the total opposite. Traditional, disciplined, pure precision. Their duels aren't just fights, they're dance battles between chaos and order. Second, DJing. Champloo is constantly remixing itself. The record scratch transitions, the looping lo-fi beats, even the way the story cuts between tones, comedy one episode, tragedy the next, all of it works like a DJ spinning records, scratching history until something fresh emerges. Third, graffiti. Look at the split screens, the bold title cards, the bursts of color and text. Champloo doesn't look like a dusty period piece, it looks tagged, painted, vandalized. It feels like someone spray painted hip hop across Edo Japan and dared you to look away. And finally, emceeing. Listen closely to the way these characters talk. Mugen spits in slang, fast, messy, improvisational, like he's freestyling every insult. Jin speaks the opposite way, measured, deliberate, cutting with precision. Their clashes aren't just in combat, they are battles of rhythm and voice, and in between, Fu keeps the flow alive, riffing, steering, grounding the energy like the host of a cipher. It's dialogue, sure, but it's also performance, it's rhythm, it's emceeing. So, the four pillars aren't just a neat analogy. They are the show's genetic code, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Hip-hop isn't just in the soundtrack, it's in the anime soul. But a great beat needs a great song, and this incredible style we just broke down is not empty. It's in service of one of the messiest, most real, most human journeys in anime. The style gives us the language, but the characters and their story, that's what gives it a heart. So if the four pillars are the show's style, its very DNA, then the storytelling is how that style comes to life. It's the remix method. On the surface, it's a classic road trip, a ronin, a criminal, and a waitress bound by a flimsy promise and a shared sense of having nowhere else to go. But this isn't a story about destiny. They aren't the chosen family. They are three people who, for a brief moment, decide to walk in the same direction, and the way their story is told is a constant remix. If most shows have a genre, Champloo has a playlist. One episode it's a harrowing samurai drama about trauma and vengeance, the next it's an absurdist comedy about inventing baseball, then it's a zombie story, a stoner heaven comedy, a tragic romance. Calling this filler misses the point entirely. The remix is the point. This genre fluidity is the narrative equivalent of a DJ scratching between tracks. It keeps you off balance, alive to the moment, and constantly surprised. And at the center of this remix are our three core elements: Mugen, Jin, and Fu. Mugen is a chaotic freestyle. He is pure unfiltered impulse. He acts first, thinks never. His past is a mystery because for him, only the present moment is real. Jin is the structured classical sample. He is discipline and precision, a man trapped by the codes of his past. Where Mugen is all forward motion, Jin is burdened by history. And Fu is often misunderstood. She is not just the glue or the comic relief. She is the conductor of this chaos. Think about it. She hires them. In a world that gives a young orphan girl like her zero agency, she actively recruits two of the most dangerous men in Japan and forces them to serve her goal. Her quest for the samurai who smells of sunflowers is the steady beat this entire freestyle journey rides on. It's a search for memory, for identity, for a past to call her own. And this is why their bond feels so earned. It's messy, unromanticized, and built on shared experience, not destiny. They bicker, they threaten to leave, they get on each other's nerves. They aren't friends, they're accomplices. And that makes their small, unspoken acts of loyalty, the moments they choose to come back for each other, feel more powerful than any grand declaration of friendship ever could. It's a found family, not because they complete each other, but because their strengths and flaws create a perfect, if not chaotic balance. They are a living remix. And just as the characters find harmony in chaos, the entire show is held together by a soundscape that perfectly captures the feeling of their journey. A soundscape that, for many of us, has become the sound of memory itself. The soundtrack of Samurai Champloo is one of the most distinctive in anime history. It wasn't just background noise, it was the pulse of the show. Across the 26 episodes, producers like Nujabes, Fat John, Force of Nature, and Tsuchi created something that felt less like a typical score and more like a curated mixtape. Every beat and every loop felt alive, stitched together like it was sampled straight from the world itself. It's lo-fi, it's jazzy, it's raw when it needs to be, and fragile when it hurts. One episode hits you with a heavy percussive beat that turns a sword fight into a cipher. The next drifts into hazy melodies that sound like they're already fading into memory. What makes it powerful is how naturally it blends into the journey. When Mugen swings his sword, it feels like part of the rhythm. When the trio vanish through fields, the beat drifts with them. And in the quiet pauses, campfires, long walks, fleeting conversations, the music hums like an echo of something you'll never fully get back. This wasn't music made to sit in the background. It was music made to carry the story. And if this mixtape has a soul, it's Nujabes. While the other producers built the word's rhythm and edge, Nujabes composed its heartbeat. His tracks, like the one you're hearing right now, aren't just heard, they are felt. They are the sound of nostalgia for a present moment, the audio equivalent of a memory forming in real time. His soundscapes were the perfect companion to Fu's quest, a search for a single fragile memory. His music is that feeling of longing. It wraps around their fleeting journey, elevating every shared glance and silent understanding into something sacred and permanent, even as it slips away. And nowhere is this more potent than in the ending theme, Shiki no Uta. More than a song, it's a farewell at the end of every episode, a lesson in the beautiful impermanence of it all. The tragic passing of Nujabes in 2010 made his theme of fleeting beauty heartbreakingly real. His music always sounded like something precious slipping through your fingers. Now it feels like a legacy, a reminder to cherish the moment. And that's why this soundtrack, this collaborative mixtape, has endured far beyond the anime. It isn't just tied to Mugen, Jin, and Fu. It's tied to our memories. To memories we can't get back, but we'll never ever forget. So, what's the point of all this style, this sound, this journey? Underneath the hip-hop aesthetic and the genre hopping, Samurai Champloo is a story about one thing above all else: freedom. But not the kind you're given, the kind you have to seize for yourself. Edo Japan was a world of strict hierarchies, unbreakable codes, and assigned roles. A world with no room for misfits. And our protagonists are the ultimate outcasts, not because they lost their place, but because they rejected the very idea of having one. Mugen the criminal, Jin the disgraced ronin, Fu the powerless orphan. Their freedom is born from having nothing left to lose. No master to serve, no home to return to, no name to uphold. This liberates them in a way no noble samurai could ever understand. Their rebellion isn't a grand political statement. It's personal, it's survival, it's Mugen fighting for the thrill, Jin upholding his own personal honor, and Fu demanding to be heard. This mirrors hip-hop's very origin. A culture born from the streets, a creative rebellion against a system that had no place for the people in it. And their bond is the ultimate expression of that freedom. They aren't tied by blood, duty, or destiny. They are bound by a single, radical choice. The choice, again and again, to not walk away, to stay together. In a world that told them they were nothing, they found in each other a reason to be something, to be free. The anime took the classic samurai trope of a ronin and remixed it for a modern age. It's no longer about serving a lord or a code. It's about finding freedom not in power or status, but in the defined move of moving forward. And that message of seizing your own freedom as an outcast couldn't be more relevant today. In fact, you could argue that Samurai Champloo didn't just predict the style of the internet age, it predicted its very soul. When Samurai Champloo ended in 2005, it didn't wrap everything up in a neat bow. There were no happy ever afters, no grand speeches. Just three wanderers going their separate ways with nothing but the road and the music left behind. And that ending is why it lingers, because Champloo was never about arriving, it was about the journey itself. 2 decades later, the influence of Champloo is everywhere. You can feel it in anime that dared to ban genres, in lo-fi hip-hop playlists that flood YouTube, and the way music and image now blend effortlessly across the internet. The series didn't just remix history, it helped remix culture itself. And yet, for all its cultural footprint, Champloo's greatest legacy is deeply personal. Ask anyone who's watched it, and they'll tell you not about the importance of the show, but about how it made them feel. The late night walk soundtrack by Nujabes, the sense of belonging in three characters who never quite belonged anywhere, the freedom to carve out your own rhythm. Champloo lives on because it gave us more than a story. It gave us a mixtape of memory, and like any good track, once it ends, you can't help but hit play again. 2 decades later, what makes Samurai Champloo so alive is that it feels like it was made for us. Its rhythm, its irreverence, its constant remixing of history, that's the way we live now, online and in culture. It's not an artifact you admire from a distance. It's a language you're still fluent in. And that's the difference. Some shows age into monuments, something you respect but never touch. Samurai Champloo never became a monument. It stayed a pulse. For years, Samurai Champloo was called Cowboy Bebop's younger sibling, the stylish follow-up, the remix of Watanabe's first masterpiece. But the truth is harder, and maybe a little uncomfortable. Samurai Champloo isn't just a sibling, it's the stronger work. Cowboy Bebop was a love letter to the past, a story about the weight of memory, the inevitability of tragedy. It was perfect, but it was closed, a polished diamond. Samurai Champloo though, Champloo was alive, messy, rebellious, unpolished, but endlessly breathing. Where Bebop ended, Champloo kept moving. It gave us not just style, but freedom. It didn't mourn the past, it carved the future. In the end, Samurai Champloo was never about destiny. It was about the beauty of moments, of meals shared, of fights survived, of roads traveled together. It's a story about outcasts who refused to be defined by the world, and in doing so, defined themselves. 20 years later, Samurai Champloo doesn't just hold up, it breathes. It's not frozen in time. It moves with us, like the beat of a record, looping endlessly forward. That's why it feels alive. Cowboy Bebop was a masterpiece of memory, while Samurai Champloo is a masterpiece of motion. And that's why it's not just remembered, it lives.